Alright, so let's continue. So before we further write the rules for the update method in the similar way, there is something which I kind of missed while writing the rules for the create one, this thing, where we are verifying the values of the field. So the thing is, the shortcode, this thing. Along with this check that it is supposed to be of 6 characters, we also need to check whether or not the same shortcode is being used or there is a document ID with the same shortcode within the root level links collection that we have over here. So this is something which we briefly discussed earlier and I kind of missed this thing out while writing the rules. So let's do that now. Let's write in the rules. Now for a security rule, there are two functions in which we can check an external document. So let's just take a look at that first. So within the Firestore security rules, maybe if we just search for the functions, we should be able to get the two functions which are exposed. The first one is the get. So the get one, like both of them take the path of the document. The get one actually gets the data of that document, whereas the exist one, it returns back a boolean value stating whether that document exists. So we will be using this thing in order to make sure that the shortcode, like a document doesn't exist, a document ID doesn't exist with this shortcode. So for that, the other thing is we can shift this check to the very end. Like we should be checking the existence of the document at the very end, because when we call this function, the exist or even the get one, this thing in itself, it does count against the reads that are given to you, like the reads that are given to you within the console. So it makes sense to check the document only after we have checked all the other fields. Otherwise, if the document doesn't exist and it turns out that any other condition failed, so that's one wasteful read that will be counted against us. So it makes sense to check this thing, and in fact we can shift the entire condition for the shortcode at the very end in such a way. So now, along with this check of checking the length of the string, let's use the exist method, and to this function we have to pass in the path. Now the path has to be absolute, which means from the starting, and it means that we actually have to use this thing. We actually have to construct it from the very starting. So let's do that. Let's copy it from here and let's pass it to this thing. So over here, if we need to use a variable, it's actually stated over here that if we want to use a variable within the path that we pass into these functions, we have to use this syntax. We have to wrap it inside of brackets and we have to put in a dollar before that. So over here, the database, as it is a wildcard, as it is a variable which we are catching while matching this thing, the root level match. So we will be referring it by using the same syntax as per the documentation, the docs as such, this syntax. And then next to it, like after the documents, we need to tap inside the root level links collection, within which we again need to use a variable which is for the shortcode, this thing. So for that, let's use the same syntax. 1 second. This thing. So within the incoming data, we can refer the shortcode in such a way. So this function, the exists, this thing is going to return back a boolean value if that document exists. But in this case, we only want, like we do not want this to happen. That's the condition. The document should not exist. So for that, we can add in the exclamatory mark before as such. So we only want to proceed if there is no document with the same ID, like the shortcode as the ID. So that being done, I think we do have the data, and actually this is the thing. We are passing the shortcode of this thing, which will fail. So let's just create another document. So the name has to be a valid one, created at has to be a timestamp, that too a time in the past. Then we need to pass in the long URL. Then we have the total clicks, which has to be a number, that too of 0, and then the shortcode. So let's do one thing. I will be using one of the shortcodes, or to say a document ID which already exists. So let me just refer it as such. It has to be like, make sure of the case sensitivity. Let's copy it from here and pass it as the value to the shortcode. So this thing will, like, this check will be false because the document does exist and we are kind of reversing the value. So this thing should deny the request, and if we test it out, let's see, as you can see, it's denied, and the reason should be that this thing should be false, as you can see. However, if we just delete the document from here, well, actually we would have to, never mind, let's delete the document in such a way, and now if we try the same request, it should be allowed. Let's see. So that is perfect. That's exactly what we need to check. So that's perfect. Now we just need to write the rules for the update. Let's just do that.